I am calling to order the Collegedale Municipal Planning Commission, and we'll start with an invocation, and Vice Mayor Johnson is giving that for us this evening.
Shall we pray? Dear God, we thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight on this beautiful day. We appreciate the voices that will be heard tonight and opinions, and we ask that you guide us and let us do the city business. Amen.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner White, Member Friesen, Member Lehman,
Here.
Member Moody,
Here.
Vice Chairman Gibbons, Chairwoman Gray.
Here. Now we're ready for the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. I'm ready for a motion on that.
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Yay.
Member Lehman,
Yes.
Member Moody,
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Yes. And at this time, because my family and I help with events on this particular property, we are, and I'm not going to chair this portion of the meeting, and our vice chairman is out of town tonight, we're going to elect a chair pro tem. And so the floor is open to elect a chair pro tem.
I move Todd.
Second.
Okay, so we have a first and a second for Mr. Lehman to chair the remainder of the meeting. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Yay.
Member Moody,
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Yes. And we should have asked you if you're willing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll move on to our first case in old business, and we are going to try to adhere to some time constraints. And so I know there's a lot of individuals that want to speak. I chair another planning commission that does like a 7, 9, and 2 rebuttal. And so I do know that there's probably a number of people that want to speak. So we're going to try to, we had a long discussion and most of us were here. And so I know there's many people that want to reiterate some of those main points. And so you'll be more than, there'll be an opportunity to do that, but we are going to try to hold to some time constraints just to keep on task. And so our first order of business under old business is zoning case 2022-02. It's a request to rezone Edgemond Road parcels 132-053 and 132-054 from AG agricultural to R1L low density single family. And if you would, I guess, do we have a staff presentation we can start with?
Yes. So first I'll start with the general process so that everyone in the audience is aware. The Planning Commission will make a recommendation. Those recommendations could be to approve, could be to deny or approve with conditions. That recommendation then goes to the City Commission, which this case would have an initial reading on October the 3rd, and then a second reading on October the 17th. That would also include a public hearing. And so that will be the Planning Commission's role tonight, will be a recommendation for the City Commission. So rather than rehash the entirety of the staff report that we went through previously, the applicant has revised the site plan. They've eliminated all of the townhomes, and they have reduced the density from 591 units to 512 units, which gives a aggregate density of 1.26 units per acre. Under the existing zoning, they would be allowed 1.0 units per acre. The proposed density on the west side of the road would be 1.3, east side 1.2. That's how that breaks up. And so from there, those are the changes since the last meeting and what was previously in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Okay, if you'd like to come up and give your name and address or who you're with or representing, and we'll have about 7 minutes to present. We'll go from there. Go
Okay, thank you. Mike Price, MAP Engineers, 7380 Applegate Lane, Chattanooga, Tennessee, has has been mentioned by Mr. Hines, the development, we did make some changes. We heard some of the concerns that came out of last month's meeting. I had several people who came to me after the meeting and expressed concern about the townhomes. So those have been eliminated, and we are strictly now all single-family homes that are proposed to be constructed. In addition, we have reduced the density to take into account some environmental issues that we have been working through as it relates to some of the streams and wetlands on both properties. And so now we're looking at a density at 512 units or 1.26 units per acre. There's been a traffic study that has been completed. The traffic study shows that we need to improve Edgemond Road, basically starting at approximately 60, 80 feet south of the railroad tracks and continue that 3-lane section back through the bridge to create sufficient stacking capabilities for that signalized intersection there that's been recently installed so that we'll have proper stacking distances. The traffic study and going through and doing this found that by whether or not this development occurs, that still needs to happen. The numbers bear out that given by the year 2030, that needs to be done. So what we're looking at is incorporating that as part of our design is to do those traffic improvements there at that intersection. It says if it does that our level of service will be acceptable as it is today in the year 2030. The issue that I think was brought up last month had to do with sometimes when you have accidents on the interstate and people use this as a cut through. In those situations, we really can't design to address that. It essentially becomes a parking lot and everybody's trying to figure out their best way home. They're looking on MapQuest and they're trying to figure out where is the yellow lines versus the red lines. And that's just not anything that we can really address as it relates to what improvements that we can incorporate as part of our design. But we recognize those situations occur, but we also state that that's not anything that we have any control or ability to help and address. The other items that I would like to point out is that we do have a centralized point where we have a roundabout that is proposed for both subdivisions, which creates an efficient and safe manner for traffic to flow through. It doesn't create any stop conditions for anyone. It creates yield conditions. And so given all of these changes and the way that we have tried to adapt to the comments that we heard last month, we think that we're coming forward with a better plan as a result of some of those comments. Is it to everyone's liking? Probably not, but I don't know of very many developments that have a density proposed of 1.26 units per acre for property this size, given the improvements that are going to have to be made to the infrastructure to make this development occur. And given that we have eliminated all the townhomes and reduced density, I think that 1.26 units per acre versus the 408, which we would be allowed by right, which is 1 unit per acre, that's not a hard ask on what we're doing. 408 homes, 512 homes. The traffic is essentially the same in terms of the impacts. So the ask is to be approved in the PUD with 512 homes. And if there's any time remaining, I'd like to reserve that for my 2 minutes as well, please.
Okay, thank you. You're right over 4 minutes. Is there any questions for the applicant or staff? Mr. Moody?
Will there be any problem in widening out Edgemond Road there at the railroad track?
So the road winding that will occur will actually be south of the railroad tracks is what will occur, and we will carry that through the bridge. So what you've got if you are traveling northbound and you come up to the railroad tracks, there's the right turn lane just kicks out really pretty quickly. What we will do is extend those 3 lanes back through the bridge over Little Wolf Teaver Creek and then provide a proper taper coming into that so that you don't have that sort of quick jut out that currently occurs.
So that is an additional lane over the bridge.
It is an additional lane over the bridge, yes, sir.
So
And-
that's a bridge expansion.
It is a bridge expansion. It's not culvert. It is a bridge, yes.
Any other questions for?
What about the sidewalks down Edgemond Road? Is that,
So what we have talked about is actually creating, not sidewalks, if you will, necessarily down the road, but creating some connectivity along and through there that would allow for the future tie-ins going further to the south and to the north. And we would work with staff to work through those particular items. The west side is impacted by the stream and the buffer. So you're sort of limited in what you can do in through there. We do have some ability more on the east side, but we would work with staff to basically, if you look at where the north arrow is on this drawing, and then if you go straight up, you'll see the tip of the western side. And you'll see the sort of gray line that kicks out to the right. That's where we would provide a sidewalk that connects back out to Edgemond that would then carry to the sidewalk through our development, and then eventually that would then come back out onto Edgemond. So you'd have a sidewalk, but it wouldn't necessarily be running right along the edge of Edgemond Road in through there.
When I look back at the deferral, when we first requested you all to defer for 30 days, it was a traffic study, fire marshal review, and then more information about the character and design of the development. Could you address the fire marshal review, please?
So we've had comments with the fire marshal. We had some email correspondence back and forth based upon what, and I don't know if he's here tonight.
he was supposed to be here.
Okay. Our understanding is that we have met the IFC, the International Fire Code requirements based upon this design.
Okay.
And we communicated that to him within a week after last month's meeting. And so I've not heard anything to change our opinion of what we gave to him, that was our understanding. And he's not said, no, we were incorrect.
Okay. And are there any further details as far as the character or the design of the development that
Well,
you wanted to present this evening?
I think with what we're looking at are all single-family homes. So you're looking at some 2 stories generally, for the most part. You're looking at homes going to be in the $400,000 price point and up. So you certainly have a lot of community space. We do have clubhouse and pool area that is been set aside. So there are amenities and walking trails and community space. So it would be a community that people would like to live and be able to have the ability and that we would afford to them to walk through, and it's a walkable, livable community.
Can you address the mountainsides? Because there are not homes on the mountainsides on White Oak and Grindstone, and just talk a little bit about what the plan is for those.
That's why we are showing trees. We're not showing homes. So the plan is essentially to leave much of that undisturbed, maybe use it for some walking trails. But by and large, much of that is going to be left in its present state and not developed.
And Mike, I think this picture, a lot of people are concerned because I've heard a lot of people saying about they're going to go in and clear cut. Well, this is obvious. We're not clear cut, or Empire is not clear cutting. A lot of trees are being left. There will be trees taken out. I'll be crazy not to think that, but a lot of this is pasture on the west side of the road. It's pasture behind the first row of trees by the creek. But I think that this shows that there is a lot of trees and green space left.
I would agree. And what I would state too is if the plan were to go in and clear cut, that would be sort of cutting your own throat, because now it no longer creates the same character and country feel that you currently have out there now. And so, the plan is to leave all of that green space and trees in its current state, with the exception maybe again cutting in some walking trails and bike trails and things such as that.
And would that be available to residents of this community only, or would it be available to the public, to the wider Collegedale community?
I think that's a discussion to have, because obviously with the cost of trails or building the cost of those trails comes some money. So if it's something that City of Collegedale has interest in, then I'm certain that that's something that we could work through to create. You have to have the parking areas for people to go through, and then who maintains the trails and all of those sorts of things. But I don't think that we're looking at this as an exclusivity to just the residents that would live here, but we need to work through those details with staff.
Any other questions for the applicant? I've got a few for staff. And we're talking about taking an agricultural zone parcel and rezoning to R1 low density. And he made the comment, I just sort of want to reiterate a couple of things, hopefully. So you can put single-family residential homes in an agricultural zone, and that's 1 unit per acre.
Correct, as it sits.
As it sits. And I know the request now is for like 1.26, and you said that. So we're close to that. The second thing is, and we talked about the green space and some of where the lots are and where they're not. So the next case is the PUD, obviously, if it's rezoned. And so the PUD would limit it to this site plan, correct? With some minor
Substantially.
modifications. So since he's not showing a lot along Grindstone there to the south, I guess that's Grindstone, there wouldn't be lots there based on the approved plan if it's recommended, whether it's recommended or not through this body, and it goes on to city council.
So if this PUD plan is approved, the development would have to be substantially similar with 512 or less units, and the layout would have to essentially match.
Okay. And then the last thing, I'm assuming you and staff have looked at the traffic impact study, and it does, I'm assuming, require some additional stack across the bridge area. And so y'all reviewed that.
Yes.
And is the signal is a Collegedale or it's maintained, operated,
State.
maintained by Collegedale?
The state installed it, but we maintain and
Okay.
operate it.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think the way I'd like to do this, and I'm assuming most people are in opposition. If you're not in opposition, you don't have to raise your hand, but I think it'd be good for us to sort of identify, and I'm gonna ask for opposition first, and then if there's any that are here in support. And then I would ask that the individuals that want to speak to start lining up, and we are going to try to hold to some time constraints. We do want to hear your points, but so is the majority of the crowd here for this case? And if so, have either questions or are opposed? Hopefully you'll get some information, but can I see a show of hands? I think that's helpful for us. If you're here for this case, but you're opposed to the development. Okay. Thank you, that's helpful. And then if you're here in support, I know there's one at least, but okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, I guess what I'd ask now, if you'd like to speak, and I know we've got a lot of information, I believe it was 2 months ago now because we deferred it for 30 days, but if you'd like to speak, we'd like to hear from you. I may interrupt at some point if there's a lot of people behind you. If we make the same points, I would also ask that individuals are going to make points that are going to be important. We don't necessarily want to hear the same point, over and over. So I would ask for that too. So if you want to speak, and then now's the time for opposition to this case, if you just line up down this center aisle, that'll give me an idea of who wants to speak. And then one at a time, if you could just I guess we do name and address for the record. So, yes, sir, please.
I'm Vince Houghton. I live in Misty Valley at 8902 Fox Glen. I just had 2 questions. The first one is, the trees along Edgemond Road are already being cut down. Do we know why that's happening?
EPB,
EPB is doing that. Okay, and also along Lee Highway.
that's correct.
Okay, my second question would be, the waters that flood that area once or twice a year, what's going to happen to the water?
Okay. And if you'll state your questions, there'll be time for some comments relative to answer those questions. But,
Okay.
but most everything has to be permitted, FEMA and other things. So, and the applicant will have some time to respond. So it's really, if you've got
All right.
questions, he's going to take notes and he's going to
Okay,
respond.
well,
to
that's
that.
my question.
Thank you, sir.
Name is Austin Miller. I live at 285 Matt Circle, Cleveland, Tennessee. Phone number 423-584-4309. So I come before the council today to present a petition that I had started. I started this petition not I, myself and a couple other individuals started this petition, I believe, in July 22nd. Currently, this petition sits at 2,130 signatures in opposition of rezoning. not of the PUD, not of the idea, but in opposition of rezoning specifically. This petition is equivalent to 18.4, now it'll be a little bit more, percentage of the population of Collegedale. According to the Hamilton County Election Board, the November 3rd, 2020 state and federal election said that in total, across all 4 Collegedale precincts, you had about 2,375 votes cast. My petition represents 88.4% of the active voting population in opposition of this PUD. So,
So I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you have the city and address of all the 2,100 people?
I do.
Are they all Collegedale?
They are not in all in Collegedale,
I'm just
majority.
trying to pick apples to apples. You're taking.
No, absolutely. Majority, I will present you all with specific PDF of the petition. There are people outside the community.
Sure.
Obviously.
You're outside.
I'm outside the community. However, majority of the respondents to the petition are within Tennessee, and even at that, majority of them are within Collegedale, Chattanooga, and Ottawa.
So we're really talking about Collegedale when you use the voting, the 2,000 people that voted. So yeah, we'd like to see that.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And my point with the voting population is not to directly say all the people who responded are within the district to vote. My point is the amount of people that are responding to this is equivalent to the amount of people within those voting districts.
So are these exactly the same?
They're together, they're a part of the same petition.
Because there's a lot of people in Chicago and Colorado, and I'm just trying to get apples to apples when you come up here and present this. So I'd like to see true Collegedale addresses,
Sure.
Grindstone
and-
Estate addresses.
And that may be something you, after, I mean, we're going to make a recommendation today, whether we recommend to deny or approve, it's going to go to city council. And so there'll be an opportunity. So that's probably some good input to. maybe
Yeah,
clarify.
and I can compile the designated and specific zip codes and the cities that all those applicants live in. But I think the petition just shows awareness of the idea, and the respondents are in opposition. And so, yeah. Just a, yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
My name is David Golden. You wanted address 8940 Gray Mountain Drive,
Misty Valley.
Misty Valley,
Thank you.
in the back. While the changes to the proposal are improvements, there are still many reasons why it's a bad fit for the area. These include traffic congestion, density and compatibility with the surrounding neighborhoods, and pressure on infrastructure. The proposal still puts too many houses into one small space. The density, even, and I did quick calculations, without the townhomes in there, it now drops to 8 units per acre over the 64 acres that comprise the footprint that the houses are actually going to be on. This one small piece of land will hold more homes than all of the surrounding neighborhoods combined. As the city had determined, Misty Valley's density is 1.24 units per acre. Clavarian Hills is 0.85 units per acre. So we're talking about 1/8 of what the density is going to be in here. The 2030 plan for Collegedale describes conservation or cluster subdivisions, which this now starts to look more like what the concept is that's in the Collegedale plan. It's not there yet, though. The homes, what it presents in the plan are homes that would otherwise spread over the entire buildable tract which is not what happens here. The plan does not mention getting density credit for not building in unusable flood areas or mountain slopes. Now, turning to the traffic study, it suffers from at least the appearance of a conflict of interest, having been completed for the developer rather than completed for the city. It's inadequate. It totals only 4 hours on a single day, focusing on Edgemond-Lee Highway intersection, but does not address the impact of the proposed development on the existing residents who will be subordinated by stop signs to the development's traffic, which is coming off of the traffic circle. The study does predict that Edgemond Road traffic will be 2.4 times what it is today if this proposal is built. The traffic study predicts a downgrade in the Lee Highway intersection once the development goes in. And finally, the traffic study entirely ignores the frequency with which Edgemond Road, as you go into that curve going into the Lee Highway intersection, it completely ignores the frequency with which that part of Edgemond Road goes underwater after heavy rains. So, as I stated, there are many reasons why the proposal is still not compatible with the existing neighborhoods, and we still have to live here. While I focused on traffic and housing density, there will be other people addressing additional problems. And I'd just like to remind everybody that 2 months ago, we had an estimated 300 plus people who were local, who were all here in person, in addition to the petition that you now have with 2,100 signatures. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've never done this before. Okay, I'm Ashley Main, 8721 Green Gap Road. I just live right here in Ottawa. I am a mother of 2 young children, and we don't need more people in this area. I know growth is important, but we don't. Our teachers are overrun and overtaxed and underpaid. We currently have over 180 open positions across Hamilton County. That number for the size of our county is huge. For example, my son's class has, I think, 22 children in it. You take one teacher away, and that is 22 more kids have to get spread out across the other teachers who don't need the extra workload. By moving more people into the area, we are stealing education and opportunity from not only our children, but future children and families. It doesn't matter if it's private or public school, because to get to private school, there's a waiting list. And what are you doing in the meantime between starting there? You have to go into public school, right? You've got to have an education somehow. Our number of educators is declining, and as more and more people move in, it's not moving in the same direction. So my comment is that we don't need more people here. Right? We need to focus on our children and their future and our future children. So that is my comment.
Thank you.
If we could hold the applause just to try to keep some decor, and I understand most everything they say are going to be supported, but we're right at about time. So I'm going to give about 6 or 8 more minutes, but that does take a little bit of time away. So go ahead, sir.
I'll reserve my comment on freedom of expression and being fundamental in this country. My name is Kevin Kibble, K-I-B-B-L-E, K-E-V-I-N, Kevin Kibble. I'm at 5643 Edgemond Road. And I would like to thank Mr. Price for making some changes. I appreciate that. I do. You're very good at what you do. And I think that it sounds like he's been listening. I was listening when I heard that Mr. Price said that the International Fire Code was successfully met by a discussion, I think email exchange, I believe he said, with the fire marshal, who I'm sorry is not here. I tried to call him just to verify what Mr. Price said. Unfortunately, conversation between 2 people does not mean a law is changed. I just wanted to know if the commission is familiar with section D107 on 1 or 2 family residential developments. That is not only the International Fire Code, it's the City of Collegedale Fire Code currently, unless it's changed by some conversation between 2 people. If it's not been changed, section D107 under 1 or 2 family dwelling residential developments said, developments or 1 or 2 family dwellings where the number of dwelling units exceeds 30 shall be provided with 2 separate and approved fire apparatus access roads. 2 roads are required for more than 30 dwellings. Hamilton County raised that to 200 dwellings. It doesn't mention any change anywhere that I can see on the website. If you want to look at the website, it's underneath the link, maintaining the quality of our community, oddly enough. I like the words, maintaining the quality of our community. So what we're saying is, just for clarity, the distance is calculated by a diagonal line, taking the maximum diagonal distance of the subdivision and dividing that in half and measuring the distance in a straight line between roads. So what we're looking at in that little tiny map is that the distance for the larger subdivision on one side of Edgemond Road is about 3,400 feet. The distance required between roads would be about 1,700 feet. The current distance between these 2 entrances is 700 feet. Let me just remind you, the law requires currently, unless it's been changed, that the distance between access roads for fire apparatus should be approximately, according to this, 1,700 feet. There's currently 740 feet. We just don't make laws by conversations and emails sent between 2 people. If I was doing 75 miles per hour right here on Apison Pike, and an officer stopped me and pulled me over, as he should, I cannot say, well, I had a chat with someone and we decided that it should be 70 miles per hour. We need to keep the laws or change the laws. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Poland. I live at 5714 Edgemond Road, and my number is 615-517-5639. I just wanted to say that I read through the traffic report, and as someone who drives that intersection every single day, even when it is a normal traffic time, those get so backed up. And if there is a train, it is not the Edgemond side that is the issue. It's the Lee Highway side, because every time that right turn lane into Edgemond backs up. And if you add more people needing to get into Edgemond, that's going to back up even further, and it will create even worse traffic than there already is. And that's not even including the fact that we have construction and traffic. On the other side, we're enclosed by railroads. And I know that's kind of changing on the other side, but it's very far distance to drive out the other direction. But it is about 10 minutes if you can't get through those 2 intersections with railroads. And that's what the people we have right now in that area. So it is the Edgemond, it would make it a little bit better on the Edgemond side, but if you can't change the Lee Highway side, it's going to cause more traffic for Collegedale as a whole. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Eve Knight. I live at 5017-A Bestmore Road, right next to the airport. Phone number is 315-420-6614. I just have 2 questions. One, the improvements to the road mentioned between the bridge over the railroad tracks. From what I understand, we don't actually control that. The railroad company does, and they've already denied any widening of that road when they put the light in. So I was wondering how that would be addressed, since we can't actually control that. The second question is, has there been any consideration for how, from what I understand, they're counting on a bunch of people from California to actually come in and move in here, which we're Tennessee, not California. We don't want to look like California, and we don't want to act like California. But this looks like it's designed for California, not for us. I guess I was wrong. There was one more thing. The last time I was here, I mentioned just a question on how many people would actually be willing to live that close to the railroad tracks. And it was rather dismissively addressed as they'll get used to it. While they may be from California and accustomed to their houses shaking periodically, I don't think they're accustomed to them shaking on a schedule. So that would probably need to be studied to some degree. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rusty Sachs. I live at 9964 Homewood Circle in Homewood. And my number is 423-322-8403. I came to the July 11th meeting. I resisted the urge to get up and make a comment, but I couldn't today. I saw the 22-page traffic study that was done the day after the July 11 meeting. It was done on the 12th for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. That doesn't give any indication of how much traffic there is during the school season, okay? And I would be happy to sit out there for 8 hours one day and count everybody after school has started, but I think an adequate traffic study is needed. And 4 hours, to me, does not comprise a traffic study. There's so much more traffic during school time, and I don't think there's any way that it's going to be just 2,000 or 3,000 extra people from what it is, or I think it's going to be more like 3 or 4 times whatever number they counted during that. That's my comment this time. Thank you.
And we're right at about 17 minutes. I'd like to give we've got about 4 people left, another 5 or so minutes. And so, but go ahead. Yes, sir.
My name is Lehman Randall. I live at 8605 Kindred Lane here in Collegedale. My phone number is 423-500-4687. I'll keep my comments brief, but I thought there was some new information or some new things that I could shed some light on maybe. I would like the developer and or the city to address the discrepancies between the lot sizes in this PUD and the surrounding area. Just for comparison, and these numbers are from the Hamilton County GIS, I would be happy to look over them with you. But the Misty Valley subdivision averages about 0.58 acres per a lot. The Cloverland Hills Drive averages 0.84 acres per lot. Pennywood, about 1.0 acres per lot. Homes on Edgemond that weren't included but that are north of Tucker are 2.72 acres per lot. And homes on the north side of Lee Highway, not far away, less than the size of this community, less than 1,000 feet. Those are also 2.64 acres per lot. Whereas it's been hard to find information on lot size. The city hasn't talked about it, nor has the developer. They like to talk about dwelling units per an acre. But I believe, going back to Mr. Johnson, we need to talk apples to apples, and lot size is what we need to talk about here. So I would appreciate if when we talk about dwelling units per an acre that we also include lot size, talk about that. Secondly, I would like to talk about the Collegedale zoning ordinances. In chapter 17-9, section 9.2, it's fairly short, I'll read it. The development shall utilize design and development features that would not be possible by the application of lot by lot zoning district regulations. And these lot sizes are much closer to high density and medium density residential lot sizes. They're not low density residential lot sizes. It goes on to say it must be shown that conventional development regulations would not allow the design of the proposed project, and that the project as proposed offers features that are an improvement to conventional zoning from a community or public perspective. If there's any doubt as to the community perspective, I hope there isn't. We spent an hour and 27 minutes in the first meeting, and not one single person stood up and said, I think this is the way that Collegedale needs to go. Not one person said that. And finally, I would also like to know how they talked about the traffic study, that it needed to be widened to 3 lanes. That should have been done previously, but as was noted, the railroad blocked that from happening. I would like to know how they're going to work with the railroad to fix that for future expansion. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. Anyway, any questions, and I would be happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Fred Fuller. I live in Misty Valley subdivision. I have a lot of things I wanted to say. Time is short, and I'm not going to go there. I'd like to talk about the validity of putting that bedroom bubble out there, hemmed in by 2 traffic circles, with the only other way out going straight into Bradley County. I think that really has a lot of questions. I'd like to know some of the actual numbers of traffic, not having to do with the blockage of the interstate, but I'm trying to figure out what traffic would look like. We already back up when the train comes well around back up toward the opposite direction on Edgemond Road. I can't imagine trying to sit in a traffic circle where people might want to need to go around that circle to head the other way, but it be blocked when that happens. I'm going to tell you what I want to ask. I've heard the developer say that they've heard us. I'd like to know if our commissioners are listening. Thank you.
My name is Jay Bartley, live at 5619 Misty Valley. That is Collegedale. That is the community we're talking about, apples to apples.
Thank you.
423-618-6341. And I really have questions. Mr. Price has presented 1.26 units per acre, which is an average over that total development. But it misleads us into thinking that is a 0.8 acre per house number, which it is not. My question to Mr. Hines, if you stay ag, that's 1 unit per acre, correct? Not average.
The density would allow for the average over the property.
It would, so it'd still be 400. R1 is roughly 1/3 of an acre per home.
Typically.
So in reality, we are much more dense than R1 typical. Is that correct? With this development?
The gross density is different than the individual lot size.
Okay. So the 0.8 really reflects the surrounding community, but the 4 to 5 houses per acre does not. So I don't want them to be misled into thinking this density is more like what surrounds when it is not. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ted Mauer. I live at 5520 Barrington Country Circle, just off Edgemond Road, and my remarks are based on the handout that I gave each of you before the meeting began. I won't go through all of them, just some high points. It's been said that someone should be able to sell property to realize gain. That's true enough so far as it goes. But in our system, we're doing what we're doing here tonight, and the community has something to say about it too, because the community is affected, obviously. Progress, someone has said that you can't stop progress, and that also is true. But sometimes sitting still, staying pat, and watching what develops is in order. And some progress is just plain undesirable. Progress of stage 1 cancer to stage 2 cancer being an extreme example, perhaps. Will the density of the proposed housing be an eyesore and a blight in this immediate community? Perhaps at the very least, the number of dwellings should be reduced even further.
traffic in this area, it seems, will overwhelm Edgemond Road and other roads as they now exist. Besides that, we've already lost Tucker Road. A roundabout, meaning no disrespect to anybody, is a bit of a joke. A roundabout will address traffic flow, not traffic density. What are Collegedale's overall community density and land use goals for this farm and parcel and in this general area? Does this development comport with those? Please discuss this before voting on this application. The commissioner's first obligation is to people who already live in Collegedale. Does not include people who might live in Collegedale someday. If you believe this is the best thing for the people of Collegedale, you need to tell the people in this room why you believe that is the best thing for them, and please be specific. Finally, you don't have to vote in favor of this application. You may vote no.
Thank you.
Russell King. I live at 9915 Cloverland Hills Drive, Ooltewah. Phone is 423-396-3092. I didn't bring a prepared list like some. Wanted to come to the meeting, see what was being said, and try to respond accordingly. Ultimately, there may very well be, and hopefully a really nice development in this spot at some point. But we do have to look at the land and see what the land itself lends to a specific demographic. Not only the land, but like it's been talked about all evening, the way in and the way out and what that tells us. We talked about stacking lanes to help there at the railroad track, and that was, if you're talking about coming back to the bridge, that's actually really a pretty short distance. But the problem is not how many lanes you have for traffic. It's where does the traffic go? So let's look at the 3 miles from that location toward I-75 through Ooltewah on Odeley Highway. We have stacked lanes there going to I-75. But everybody knows that ever does that in the morning. It's the opposite coming back in. If you're going there in the morning, you've got 3 nice, beautiful lanes. 2 of them, the 2 on the left, are hardly used. There's hardly any traffic there. The 3rd lane to the right is backed up to Bojangles. And it's because everybody that's leaving there, the majority of everyone is getting on I-75 north or south. And that 1 lane is the only lane that gets on I-75. When we back that concept up to where we're talking about, right across the railroad track and to Lee Highway, I've lived there, we built there 22 years ago, and I see this every morning. 85% of the cars are not turning into Bradley County to go to Cleveland. They're turning left at that light to go to Ooltewah or Chattanooga or points beyond. So the point is, we could put 10 lanes there if we want to. But if everybody there needs to mainly turn left at particular times of the day, the traffic is going to be backed up and the other stacked lanes are going to be simply empty. So my concern overall is we don't know if there's a subdivision coming there or not. If it does, I hope it's nice. But 500 homes in this location, because we can talk about size and how many homes are supposed to fit in a, how many pegs fit in a square and so forth. But for all the traffic considerations, the safety of the area and the demographics, even with the concession, I think common sense is telling everybody in this room it's simply too many houses in that location based on the whole big picture. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if we could be brief as we finish up. I know a couple more joined, but we're right at 30 minutes and I wanted to stop at about 9. So, but please.
I do think freedom of expression is in this country, and it's something that we can cling to as individuals.
I believe we're giving people opportunity to speak. Thank you.
There are a lot of people who want to talk. My name is Melissa Owens. I'm the daughter of Charles and Phyllis Smart, who live in the rectangle kind of up on Edgemond Road. This is totally going to change things for them. I spoke a couple of times ago, and we've done this before. Hamilton County Commission wouldn't have a bad development that would have come in and just would have denuded the area. We've done this. They stood up to it. They saw it wasn't a good development. And look what we have now. Look at this oasis that we have that is Collegedale and Ooltewah. This idyllic road, everything that we have here is what everybody in the country wants. I'm going to say this in front of everybody, but I like Hallmark movies and I like Star Wars. And this is a bad Hallmark movie. Please we've got 9 minutes left and the protagonist and the antagonist are going to battle and then everything's going to be okay. Please give us that good ending at the end of this Hallmark movie. Please don't let the Empire from Star Wars come in and tear down our idyllic, beautiful area. I don't know. I'm a school teacher and I'm an ag person. I don't know a lot about tax money and how I respect your jobs. I respect the developer. I respect everyone. But my question in all of this is, do taxpayer funds go to making green spaces and community places better? And if not, that should be the purpose of taxpayer funds, besides taking care of utilities and helping with things. But what we already have, it's ironic that we would tear this down when you all try to raise money to bring people to Collegedale and show the beauty of Collegedale. This is one corridor that we want to showcase and that so many people feel so strongly about. And I'm just praying that you'll look into the faces of everyone here, look at social media, see the outcry. Not this way, Collegedale, just not this way. Thank you.
My name's Rose. I don't live in this community in Collegedale. I live in Harrison and I grew up in Collegedale. My mom is librarian at the library and I grew up here. I played on the playgrounds as a child and I went to Hidden Hills and I played with horses. I walked around Veterans Park. I love it over here. And if I could, I would definitely move over here. And I know I'm not technically a Collegedale constituent, but I'm still part of your community. And I give money to y'all's community. What I want to talk about is not anything with traffic, not about density, anything about that, because I think it's already been said multiple times. And I think y'all have already gotten beat over the bush with it. And what I really want to talk about is something that this nice man who came up before proposed, and it's another walkway in this area or like a trail or whatever. I don't understand why that's even needed. We have at least 4. We have the Commons you can walk around, the Veterans Park, we have Hidden Hills itself. I don't know if y'all have ever walked around there, but it's gorgeous and it's free and you can do it without going into a community and going on one of their back trails. It's not needed. If they can keep it, there's no real reason to add anything to it. He also talked about the country feel. We have it. There's no reason to renovate it. You're going to lose it. So those are the 2 things I really wanted to cover. I hope y'all make the best decision possible. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
I'll make my comment brief. My name is Lori Blinn, and I live in Appleton, Tennessee. I have a question that I asked at the last meeting. How many of you have actually checked out a development that has been done by this company? So you went to see it.
I
And
have not gone to see it. I've talked to their people who have built in the communities, like the Commissioner Alpharetta. And
so you went, but you haven't been to the community and actually talked to the people that built in there.
no, I've talked
What were
to
the quality of the homes?
that was
Because
Commissioner.
at $300, $200 to $300 a foot right now to build, I can tell you right now, a $400,000 house isn't going to be much. So those prices are going to go way up. But did they fulfill all the promises to the people? Are those gorgeous walking trails there? Are those clubhouses there?
According to who I spoke to, yes, they did.
And who did you speak to again?
Let's see. I'll talk to you afterwards, but I've got their names.
So you spoke to the actual people that built the houses in the community, and they loved everything
Excuse
about
me.
their development.
I spoke to the commissioner of Alpharetta. They do not build the homes.
They do not build the homes.
They-
That's
they
another,
allow
that's another
like
problem.
me- They allow, like me, Empire to come in. So,
Do you see the problems with that?
no, I don't.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, I feel like that there's not been enough background check of the company that's coming to develop this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Madeline Rogers. I live on McDonald Road. And I really quick just wanted to point out that the traffic studies that have been done don't take into account that there are building projects and businesses that have already been approved, and the traffic that will be affected by that hasn't even come into play yet by the time these will be built. So any additional traffic from these homes will be on top of things that are already in development. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Miss. Hopefully you've been taking notes. I think people, we've had a few notes up here, but if you'd like to come up and respond, you do have quite a bit of time to, if you could probably step through some of these. I'm assuming the commission may have a couple other questions for you.
Sure. So let me start first with the traffic study. There's been a lot of discussion on that. Maybe there's simply not an understanding of what a traffic study looks at and does. We have, as traffic engineers, we look at AM, morning peak hours, because that's typically when people are taking their children to school. It's when they're going to work. It's when they're going out and leaving the home. And then in the evening is when you're coming back. Those are the hours when the traffic is at its heaviest points. And so what the traffic study has done is looked at the AM peak hours and the PM peak hours existing, and then what it would look like in the year 2030, assuming that the growth continues on at the pace that it has, with our development in the year 2030 and without our development if it does not occur in the year 2030. So the traffic study is simply not looking at just 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. It looks at the whole overall assessment. But what you're really doing is you're looking at those peak times, because that's really where traffic is at its heaviest, and you have to address it at that point. So the traffic study did that. And so
If he could finish, please. I mean, let's have a little bit. Thank you.
So the traffic study took into account future growth that would occur, as well as this development and the current traffic loads. There were counters that were put out, so we took counts. All that was taken into account in the traffic study. There was discussion as it relates to the railroad and how that cuts off the ability to pass through. Yes, that's a given. But again, these are things outside of our control. Someone mentioned about the fact that living next to a railroad track in this development, in this location, would be undesirable. Well, I would point you to Council Fire, Rosemere, which are in the city of Chattanooga. Matter of fact, I lived in Rosemere. I lived there 12 years. And the first night, I thought I made a terrible decision when the train came through at 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. I thought I will never, ever get a good night's sleep again. And a week later, that train was going through and I never heard it, and I didn't hear it for the next 11 and a half years. So you do get used to it. We are all creatures of habit and things that we sort of ignore. It's my ability for me to watch a football game and my wife talk and I not hear what she's saying. So you can have a community this distance away from a railroad track and it not be the undesirable that it's been stated here tonight as it relates to that. There was also discussion about the size of the lots, the development, the density. When Misty Valley and some of these other developments were built, they were built without sewer. They were built at a different time. What we find today in developments that we do, residential subdivisions, is that the development patterns of even 20 years ago are really not being adhered to today. You can take nearby any number of different subdivisions, and what you would find are homes that are 100-foot wide lots. And then we had the Great Recession. And then we started doing 60-foot wide lots. Well, everyone here, I'm sure, would agree that Cambridge Square is a model development that everybody would love to be a part of and be in. But what I will tell you is that you have homes in Cambridge Square that are 35-foot wide and are $1 million homes. We have changed our development patterns. People no longer want 5 acres or an acre. They want someone else to mow the grass, or they want it to be done quickly so that they can spend their weekend doing other things. It's just simply a matter of we are no longer our parents' generation, if you will, in many ways. It's different. And so what we are looking at is conserving majority portions of this property, setting it aside, and then again, putting them on smaller lots, absolutely. But again, that's the development pattern that we see. This is what people want. Empire Communities are proposing to sell these homes, not hold on to them and try to rent them. They want to sell them. And they know what the market demands are and what people want. And it's true not just in Collegedale, that's true throughout Hamilton County. We see these smaller lots occurring, not the same as what's been developed in years and decades past. I would also say that lot size does not set the market price. And I said 400,000, that's a minimum is what we feel. It's probably going to be higher. But I did not want to set a number also that was too high that sounded overly inflated. I wanted to give the bottom number and state that's what we feel that we'll be at. And if we're more than that, so be it. This is not going to create Section 8 housing. This is going to create an upper scale community that is commensurate with what Collegedale, I think, wants to see as it relates to development. There was discussion about stormwater runoff, and we will certainly adhere to taking care of meeting any FEMA requirements, Collegedale and Hamilton County. If there are things that can be upgraded as it relates to Edgemond Road and flooding, that's something we'll work with staff on as it relates to that. There was some statements as it relates to we live in a day and age where people really like to say no more than they like to say yes. There is a chemical compound out there called hydrogen dioxide. And there was a young fella here about 10 years ago who did a study. And he stood in front of Walmart and said, this has killed people. It's created damage, created havoc. We need to ban hydrogen dioxide. Would you sign my petition? Everyone coming through was signing that petition right and left by the hundreds. Until someone said, wait a second, hydrogen dioxide, isn't that water? Yes, it is, H2O. My point being is people are always willing to sign something to say no rather than something to say yes. I think at the end of the day, let me point out a couple of things that we've looked at here. We are proposing, which I'm going to pass out to you, we have 3 conditions that we would like to propose as it relates to self-imposed conditions, and I'll pass those out if that's okay here. So what we have are 3 conditions, and basically I broke these out on the west side and on the east side, and so I'm going to read these out. On the west side, condition number 1, only single-family detached homes shall be allowed to be constructed in that development. Number 2, all single-family homes are to be constructed on the west side of the tributary of Little Wolf Beaver Creek and shall be located no closer than 75 feet to the existing right-of-way of Edgemond Road. Number 3, a minimum of 20% of the land area shall be set aside for community space. So those conditions here are setting all of the homes off of Edgemond Road by at least 75 feet. It leaves the stream buffer in through there intact. In other words, when someone is driving through there and looking towards that side, really what they're going to see is a vegetative buffer and screen, and it's really going to look much as what it does currently today with those conditions intact. On the east side, I have these three proposed conditions. Again, only single-family homes detached shall be allowed to be constructed for this development. 2, along the right-of-way of Edgemond Road for this development, there shall be a single row of evergreen and deciduous 2-inch caliper trees planted at approximately 25 feet on center, except as required to construct primary, secondary, and utility entrances and exits. 3, a minimum of 30% of the land area to be set aside for community space. That's almost 90 acres, the 30%. And we're planting trees along Edgemond Road after the improvements in through here are made, again, to create a vegetative screening and buffer so that as you go through here, it still has that same character, that same country characteristic that it has today. We think with these particular conditions that we are, again, looking at keeping the character the same, setting things in manner that are appropriate, and doing what is responsible growth. Last time when this body heard this case, person after person after person said, we recognize they have a right to sell their land. Tonight, what you heard was, we don't want, and in some instances, nothing. We don't want any more people. Well, that's really, again, not bearing what is fair to all and what is best for the community. What is best is an appropriate plan. And at 1.26 units per acre, I don't know how you get much more fair than that. And setting aside the community space that we have and setting these conditions to doing all single family, we are the ones that are proposing, I think, a responsible plan that meets what Collegedale is after. And I think we've addressed the issues in an appropriate manner. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those if the commission has any.
So Mike, on the bridge that you're looking at adding a lane to, I heard a couple people say that's the railroad bridge. It is not the railroad's bridge, if that's my understanding.
That is correct.
The railroad did not want, I think they wanted a shorter lane initially, with keeping the expense limited to what the state allowed. I know Mike Carter had fought for that for 4 years.
Yes. The railroad is always a difficult entity to address issues with. But with what we're doing, we will not be impacting any railroad right of way.
I have a quick question on your proposed zoning conditions here. You mentioned percentages of the land area that would be preserved on either side. Does that, the open space, the community space, are those the open spaces among the subdivision, or does that include the sides of the mountains on either side?
It includes the size of the mountains as well as some of the areas on site as well. And again, those are minimums.
Okay.
I expect to exceed those numbers that are presented here as far as the proposed conditions, but those are the minimums that we would set forth.
Any other questions?
Okay. I just want to say that part of, like, if the commission does make a motion to rezone this property, I know we've had some discussion about the density and the number on that or whatever. And can we add it, if this is rezoned, if there's a motion for that, let's just say Empire doesn't, if we do it and Empire doesn't do it, can we limit it and say, if it is rezoned, that there's a limit of 1.26 units per acre, or like, where does some of that, because if they don't do it and this is rezoned and somebody else acquires the property, then they wouldn't be restricted by that density.
As a condition of the zoning, you could.
Well, we could add it as a condition of the rezoning, or when the PUD's approved, the PUD actually sets the density based on the lot layout, correct?
The PUD does, but to what the chairwoman is requesting it would then be two separate processes if it was a different developer or if that density was to be increased. Because if the PUD was approved, that would set it. Any changes to the PUD that increase the density would also have to go back to have that condition removed for the zoning as well, if that was a
So
condition.
you would recommend go ahead and put in a condition on the rezoning also
I would
to that 1.26? Okay, well, that's a great point.
And I also want to say that if we move forward with this proposal, that the idea of these ridge sides and some of the amazing beauty that exists on this property, I would like to request that one of the conditions would be that there is public access. I appreciate that you mentioned the idea of trails, and yes, there's the expense to maintain those and put infrastructure, and I'm guessing, you'd need community parking. But these are areas like the public has brought forward. This is key to the beauty of our community and allowing community and public access, people who don't own a home right there, to access these ridges, or I guess mountainsides, to get that proper, I feel is very important.
And agree with that. And that's part of the reason that when we were looking at the development, you'll notice that these are not gated communities. If this was gated, there would be no opportunity for that. And we're not gating this. So it is going to be available for those in the community as well.
And the city is also looking for greenways and parks and recreation trails and stuff. So we're looking at expanding our existing greenway as well, so.
Where's the parking for the community?
Any other questions or comments? And if somebody, obviously.
Thank you.
She wants to. Thank you. Any questions for staff or the applicant? Let me just make sure that we state sort of what we are doing tonight and what we're not doing tonight, whether we recommend approval or denial. We're talking about land use and a zone. There's been a lot of questions about permitting and flooding and FEMA and fire marshal. Those are all code requirements, even laws, something like that. We're not debating law. There are certain requirements that any developer, that whether they got this rezoned to residential low density or left it agricultural, on that property, as long as they meet those codes, those requirements, gets those permits. And so what we're not doing up here is we're not granting permits or reviewing design related to impacts to the road. Those are all things that have to be done for this to even be developed. This is sort of from a land use perspective, is a low density residential PUD plan appropriate for this site? That's what we look at relative to this property. And so that's what we are doing. There are other individuals that have to be concerned about the traffic study and whether it's appropriate and what those requirements are gonna be or what they're not gonna be. The PUD, there's been a lot of discussion about the PUD, but the PUD is really created to allow some of this compromise that we deal with in development. Zoning is based on the gross acreage and the amount of lots. And so when you hear 400 lots, it's whether you can get 400 lots on that or not. But what the PUD plan allows you to do, and I think somebody mentioned the point about reducing your lot sizes and clustering your density. That's what a PUD plan does to allow impacts to not allow impacts to some other areas like the ridges and like the low areas. And so the PUD plan is sort of a trade-off to density in certain areas to allow additional amenities potentially. And I'm not talking necessarily public amenities. I'm talking about maybe community amenities. We all probably live in subdivisions that have certain amenities. But that's what the PUD plan is. And so the process is to try to get to a place to where you can have development and you can have responsible development, and you may get some trade-offs relative to reducing lot sizes and clustering density to where you're not impacting slopes or other areas. And so I just wanted to be clear. And the other thing we're not doing is we're not approving Empire. We're not approving any particular developer. We're approving this property for this land use. That doesn't mean, I would anticipate that Empire has gone to quite a bit of expense because they intend to develop this if it gets rezoned, but they could sell it, or somebody else could develop it once the zoning's there. So again, and all the zoning does is allow it. There are certain requirements that have to be met to get it developed. So I just want to make sure that we know at least what we're.
And when this is voted on, it goes to the city commission for final approval.
Yeah, and what I tell people a lot when we're talking about the process, it's a very good process. We talked about being able to talk. It starts at staff, and staff gets a lot of these that we may not ever see because there's certain things that don't develop well, or that maybe developers can't do that they want to do. So staff sees it. They review it from a staff professional level. We're an appointed, non-elected body. So we see it. Each of us have some different backgrounds that maybe bring some different information. So we see it as just an appointed board with hopefully some expertise with community input, and it's valuable. It's tremendously valuable. Whether, not to say anything other than it's valuable, but then once we look at it and make a recommendation, it goes to the legislative body, which is the elected, and they make the final decision. And so each process has a certain level of oversight and opinion. And so absolutely, this will be a recommendation from us, whether that's an approval or denial, and it'll go to city council for, I think, 2 readings.
Correct.
That would be the final action.
Thank you.
Sure. So I think we have a couple of options, and I'll entertain any motion. We have an option that we can approve the rezoning with these conditions or with additional conditions. We can deny the application for rezoning, or I think we could defer again if needed, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend that unless anybody.
Might point out too that even if we recommend deny, it still goes to city council.
And that's a great point. Even if we recommend deny, you'll want to make sure you stay engaged with the process, because it doesn't, ultimately the decision is through the legislative body in the city of Collegedale. So, but I will say what we're doing here is very important, because I would hope that the city council does look at these deliberations and this amount of input, and so it's not that it's not important, but it is part of the process. So,
Is there a quorum of your committee present?
yes. They would have told me otherwise.
Yes, we verified.
Thank you.
So what would a motion look like if we were going to make it? That we would accept the proposal of the PUD along with the proposed zoning condition that was presented by?
We would have 2 separate motions, one on the zoning and then one on the PUD.
Yeah, and I would anticipate we'll move straight into the second vote, because it would mirror the first, but any member can make a motion with whatever types of conditions. To your point, the applicant read out 3 conditions for west side, east side. We also had, I think, a request or a comment for a 1.26 dwelling units per acre density cap on the rezoning. Those are a couple of the ones I heard, but that would be a recommendation or a motion to approve with conditions. You could do a motion to deny. You could do any of the above.
Well, I would make a motion so that we can vote on this to approve it based upon the proposed conditions of the zoning that was submitted to us, at the 1.26 units per acre.
And I'll second it.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the rezoning with the conditions submitted with the addition of the 1.26 dwelling units per acre. It has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Seeing none, roll call.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Yay.
Member Lehman,
Yes.
Member Moody,
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Abstain.
Do I have a, our next case, which is, or the next one is the companion case, the, put my glasses on. The
2022-03.
2203, which basically locks in this site plan. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
Has been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Roll call.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Yay.
Member Lehman,
Yes.
Member Moody,
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Abstain.
Okay. We're going to move on to, we do have some new business. If y'all would like to stay, great. If you would not, I'll give a few minutes. This does go to city council on October 4th. Okay. No, my understanding, we have a quorum and we just voted to approve.
Edgeman.
Okay.
So that's Edgeman Road.
I believe it's maybe a majority of the people here. So anyway.
We verified with legal today.
Yes, sir. We verified with legal. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question about the date?
Can you give those dates for city council?
October 3rd and October 17th.
I'm sorry, I may have misspoke. October 3rd.
I wrote those dates down, and then I thought you said October 4th, and I was.
I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting that. October 3rd.
City Commission.
All right. We got one more thing to talk about.
It's in this room. Yes, sir.
Yes, this is planning commission.
Yes, sir.
The first.
All right.
Hey,
Both of those.
Weighing.
Correct, I
do you
need
get to do new business?
It doesn't matter either way.
Are we ready to get the
Yes.
second piece?
Yeah, Wayne, if you could take us through the case, new business.
New business.
2022-04.
Zoning case 2022-04 is a request to rezone 8311 Appleton Pike from C2 to R3 multifamily and R1H high-density single family. The applicant is requesting to defer for 30 days.
Okay, so we do have a request to defer for 30 days. Is the applicant here? Okay. Do we want to hear from the applicant or do we want to defer 30 days? That's our call, correct? Oh, is there opposition here?
Well, not necessarily opposition.
Oh, well, okay, then, yes, thank you for, I just assumed everybody was for the other case, but no, ma'am, we do want to honor that. So let's at least step through there and then we can make a decision whether we.
And again, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. And I am, again, Mike Price, and I'm new to this particular case that is being discussed. I will be happy to meet with y'all if you would like after this meeting to discuss and maybe even look at having a neighborhood meeting to go over the items. If we want to have the discussions more tonight in front of the commission, I'm fine with that, but just offering that as a thought. Thank you.
Well, So I guess that throws it back on us. Either we can, so they just requested, they're asking for C2 and R3 to R1H high density at 8311 Abson Pike, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And this is the property up here across from the apartments, right?
That is correct.
Well, I'm
I'll
at
be
the
real
will.
honest. I did not bring the staff report to present based on the deferral request.
But we cleared our calendars and hired babysitters because we want to be heard. So I think we should at least be heard. And these meetings are recorded, aren't they?
Yes.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
The Lions group, I don't know, Mr. President.
Yeah, ma'am, if you, come on up and we'll hear from you real quick. I mean, I do understand if you've carved out time, and it may be appropriate that you meet with them afterwards, but if you would.
Are you picking up for the project?
Yes.
From the Lions group?
With the Lions group.
With the Lions group.
So if you could maybe, I tell you what may be helpful, if you want to give your name, address, if you obviously know more about it than we, if you can
I have
give
a
a little
map.
bit of concern, maybe if you can talk a little bit about concerns, then next time, if we do defer it for 30 days, you'll have maybe made some statements on concerns, and that'll give hopefully the opportunity that they meet with you between now and then and hopefully resolve them. So,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Laura House, spelled Howse. My address is 5002 Branston Road, City of Collegedale. I am the president of the Stratford Place HOA, in addition to living on Branston Road. I've been in talks with Brian Tucker. Is that you? Nice to meet you. About just things we were talking about for this neighborhood. But man, the Stratford Place is represented back here if you guys want to raise your hands. These are mostly people who live on Branston Road where the properties touch the new development. Our biggest concerns were the lack of a buffer. We didn't, on the map that we have, there's a lot of areas where there's not a buffer to the existing properties. And so we obviously wanted that. After listening to the Hidden Hills discussion, now I'm wondering, there was a condition for nothing closer than 75 feet to existing property. We were going to ask for 30, but maybe 75 is good. I mean, this is a huge property. I learned from listening to this meeting tonight that we probably need to ask about this fire marshal review, a traffic study during school hours, not during the summer or fall break, a density calculation. Stratford Place, in case you don't know, is usually a minimum of an acre, sometimes 2 acres in Stratford Place. So if you're going to put a subdivision next to it, it'd be great if it was similar to our own subdivision. And I brought our Hamilton County restricted covenants that talks about minimum size for the lots and minimum size for the square footage. So those are just some things. And I do want to address the thing about the high density homes. I work remotely, so does my husband. We looked for property with privacy because we work from home. So COVID did change and our parents were not the same, but we just bought that house and I love having a yard and trees and privacy. So I don't think having minimum acre, 2 acres for each development or each home, minimum acre or 2 for each house, I think that's a fantastic way to preserve the trees. You don't have to mow them all down. So I just wanted to bring that up. But I do have some of my HOA board members with me. If any of them want to, if you would allow them to make a comment and speak, because they are Stratford Place right there.
Sure, if they would like to, and I think Mr. Price had offered, and it may be that most appropriate that he meet with your HOA maybe between now and if we defer, but if someone else would like to speak, that's fine, or maybe, I think we're probably going to move to defer.
Yes.
And I think we've got a commitment that there'll be some discussions if we do defer 30 days with the community. Okay.
If you defer though, would that be October 10th? That's Hamilton County fall break for schools. I'll be out of town. That's horrible timing for a deferment. Can it be a 60-day deferment? I mean, just requesting.
The deferral process is, in this case, that's the applicant's request for 30 days, and the calendar runs on 30-day increments.
I hope, and I'm assuming there'll be maybe some other people that could attend, but I'm hoping y'all at least have a really good understanding of what the presentation's going to be in 30 days, if indeed you have that community meeting. I wouldn't say you're going to be maybe all exactly on the same page, so there would need to be some representation here, but hopefully some of these issues, at least if y'all talk about it, can be discussed.
Right. And Brian Tucker especially has been a very easy person to talk to. And I do think it's worth noting that even my home is zoned as commercial. It was just a blanket zoning of Appison Pike. Everything that touched it was zoned commercial, but I'm in a residential subdivision and my own yard is zoned commercial. Doesn't mean that it should be. So residential R1, that would make a lot more sense for that would make a lot more sense. This is a zoning meeting, I get it. Should be more of a R1 area. Just saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move that that we defer it for 30 days per the applicant's request.
Second?
Okay. I have a motion to defer for 30 days. Has been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Sorry, roll call.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Yay.
Member Lehman.
Yes.
Member Moody.
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Yes.
Okay, am I still running? Okay, we now can move to other business, staff reports. Do we have staff reports?
None tonight.
Okay. And do I need a motion to adjourn?
We don't usually.
Okay, we are adjourned. Almost brought it home. I know, she hits it much harder.